everyone. Today I'm delighted to welcome Scott Allender. Scott is an award-winning leadership development practitioner, author of Enneagram of Emotional Intelligence, co-host of the Mindset Economy podcast, and a certified Enneagram teacher. At this year's Enneagram Las Vegas Community Gathering, Scott will be exploring how the stories that we tell shape the way that we think, lead, and relate to others, and how learning to question those stories can open the door to greater self-awareness, stronger relationships, and lasting change. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. So the title of your workshop is Constructive Doubt, learning to question the story you didn't know you were telling. That is such an intriguing title. What inspired that?
The title comes from some work I've been doing with leaders over the last several years, which actually is how do we start to reframe the stories that we hold? So this session is largely focused on our perception, how we see ourselves and others, and how that can be a great source of frustration. It's rooted largely in the differences in how we see things, how we don't really see things objectively. We don't see things for what they are. We see them as an extension of ourselves. So in our Enneagram type, we start to develop patterns of perception, things we automatically pay attention to. And even though we might not consciously say that we believe everybody sees things the same as we do, on some level, we expect people to see things the way that we do. And the way we see things are largely rooted in a story that we hold that we often don't even know that we're telling ourselves. But I think there's a lot of opportunity when we can develop enough metacognition, which is our ability to think about how we're thinking and apply a little constructive doubt, which is to reframe those stories into something that might help widen our perception so that we can see more and exclude less from our field of perception.
When you talk about the story that we didn't know that we're telling, what kinds of stories are you referring to? How do they influence the way that we experience ourselves and others? I mean, you just touched on that a little bit.
We all enter the world with some shared core needs, like the need for agency, the need for bonding, and the need for safety. And as we become imbalanced and more fixated into our preferred center of intelligence, that center's need becomes a little distorted. For body types, instead of being concerned with agency, they almost become myopically focused on autonomy and control. And heart types, that need of agency almost defaults into this need for image management and perception. And the head types, representing the need we all have for safety, kind of devolves into this quest for certainty in a world that is uncertain. And from there, each of the 9 types, each of the 3 types within each of those centers has their own strategy and own story. And those stories shape everything we see. And anything that's a threat to that can act as a trigger because we feel that our sense of identity and value and place in the world is under threat. And that can really cause a lot of harm in our relationships.
So for many people, doubt has a negative connotation. What do you mean by constructive doubt? How do you see that as something that's valuable?
So, yeah, I know our 6s that might be listening to this, they might be a little bit alarmed saying, I'm already, yes, yourself. I already carry so much doubt. But for you, constructive doubt would be part of what sets you up to have faith and courage, right? To doubt that story that says, I have to question everything. I have to identify all risks. I have to make sure that I'm certain and safe and my loved ones are. When you apply a little constructive doubt and reframe that story, that narrative, it allows you to then move towards a little more trust, a little bit more self-reliance, a little bit more connection to your body and to your emotions. When something feels very familiar to us, we trust it more. We tend to say, hey, this is just who I am. In fact, even when we approach the Enneagram, oftentimes we use it just to get more adjectives to describe ourselves. But to me, the real journey of the Enneagram is to learn to transcend those limitations. And the only way we can do that is if we humbly put a little constructive doubt over the story so that we can step into maybe a truer story.
After years of working with leaders and teams and organizations, what's one belief or assumption that you see people question that often leads to meaningful growth or lasting change?
I think related to what we're talking about right now is when people learn that the biggest interpersonal challenges they have at work isn't the work, but how they see the work. Let's say we're on a project team and I'm walking into it thinking, putting all my 3 perspective on it. How will this look at the end? What will people think of us when it's over? like all of those kinds of like image consciousness, perception management, and my desire to quickly get from point A to point B, and anything that interrupts my efficiency frustrates me. Now you're bringing a perspective of, yeah, but hold on, Scott, did we ask this question? What if this goes wrong? What if this happens? If I assume that we see things the same, I just see you as an impedance to my success, right? And you frustrate me. But when I do work with leaders and teams, and in just 3 hours, they start to really understand what each type's motivation and perspective is, that just unlocks really potentially sustainable change for that team. When now I don't see you as a roadblock, I see you as a gift because I can go, hey, I know my default tendency is to try to go from A to B so quickly, I might even cut corners. What am I not seeing? Help me see more. What am I not asking myself? That has been, at least what's been reported back to me when I've done work with leaders and teams, the most sustainable piece is that perspective taking, which allows us to look at the projects we're after, but we each carry with us a set of assumptions, often informed by our own lenses. And when you can do perspective taking and really start to see everything from different angles, it's powerful. It can really unlock meaningful change. You know, one thing I'll bring it in with me to the session is marble, like a sphere of some kind. I like to say we are spheres. The people around us are spheres. The problems we are tackling are spheres. Picture that there's a sphere right here, right? And I can see everything within my field of vision right here. But I have to be able to see the whole problem or the whole person. But to do that, I have to turn it. And as soon as I turn it and get that perspective, I actually lose my original perspective. Like there's no way for me to see the whole thing all at once. I need you to help see what I can't see. And even in myself, as I develop self perception, I see something about myself, but I actually need you and other people to see around the corners I can't see. It's part of what perspective taking is all about. It's to help us see the whole.
That is amazing. My next question is someone who's considering taking your workshop, what do you hope they'll take away questioning or perhaps seeing differently about themselves?
I'm hopeful that as we talk through where our minds kind of get fixated, I want to also look at what it looks like when our minds start thinking more clearly. When we do this perspective taking, when we apply this constructive doubt, when we actually can see ourselves within the whole, we have a greater perspective. Our thinking clears up. I'm hoping that people that come can at least get a glimpse of what that feels like.
Scott, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. For those of you watching, if you are interested in learning more about what Scott will be teaching, I encourage you to register on our website, www.enneagramlasvegas.com. It is happening September 11th and 12th at the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. We look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you.